The protest here is it's the capital political city.
That's Nora Fakim, a journalist talking to us from Rabat, capital of Morocco. In Uganda, the Electoral Commission has announced that the president, Mr. Museveni, has won a new 5-year term, getting 68% of the vote. His main rival, Kizza Besigye, took just 26%. Mohammed Ado sent us this from the Ugandan capital, Kampala.
President Museveni has given himself another 5 years at the helm of Uganda's leadership. That will take his rule of this country to 30 good years. His supporters are happy, but not the opposition. The opposition are claiming that the vote was rigged. They are saying there have been instances where their agents and officials across the country were intimidated by police, and they're also saying ballot boxes were stuffed for President Yoweri Museveni's party. However, the National Resistance Movement of President Museveni is saying that is not true and the vote was free and fair. The election observers, some of them international, are saying a different story, however, and the Commonwealth Observation Group has said that there has been a massive commercialization of politics in Uganda, referring to blame of some people involving themselves in voter bribery.
Well, that's the story out of Uganda with the elections there, but we return to the unrest sweeping the Arab world, North Africa and elsewhere too. In Djibouti, that's in the Horn of Africa, there have been anti-government protests in this tiny country. These pictures we lifted off YouTube, and they show hundreds of people demanding that the president, Ismail Omar Guelleh, step down after 12 years in power. Unemployment in Djibouti is round about 60%. Some celebrations among factory workers in Oman after the government ordered a big rise in the minimum wage. Private sector workers are going to get a 43% rise. The new minimum monthly salary will be $520. Prices in the Sultanate have been rising fast, but the government says the decision to increase wages wasn't taken on the spur of the moment. In China, democracy campaigners say there's been a massive government crackdown against protests which appear to be echoing what's happening in the Arab world. In Shanghai, police dragged protesters away. Web Forum posting some apparently from Chinese activists in exile had called for a Jasmine revolution. People were urged to demand work, food, housing and justice. Campaigners say leading activists have disappeared and the internet and text messages appear to be censored. One arrested woman described the Chinese government as a tyranny that suppresses its citizens. A Libyan doctor in Benghazi has told us that the military's started to side with the protesters there. As well as dozens of dead, more than 300 young male civilians have been injured, some of them wounded with heavy machine guns.
This is Al-Fadil Brigade. This is on the barricades where the residents of Al-Gaddafi, and this is where the shooting was coming from in the last 3 days, where the demonstrators passing by being shot at by this brigade. It's called Al-Fadil Brigade, and this is Al-Gaddafi's residence. And there is a section of the army sided with the people with tanks are moving to that brigade and fighting them. At the moment, in front of Al-Jala Hospital, there is a big celebration and people carrying rifles from the army, mounting an army four-wheel cars in the celebration with their arms and wearing the military dress.
Now, a lot of the trouble in Libya has put some European countries in a very difficult position because they do billions of dollars of business with Colonel Gaddafi's regime. Stephen Cole is in our European News Centre with that story and some more, Stephen.
Thanks, David. The majority of Libya's oil exports head to Europe. Now, that has made many European countries slow to criticise Gaddafi after years of trying to cement closer relations with him, as Harry Smith reports.
Ever since Colonel Gaddafi was brought out of the diplomatic wilderness, Libya has become an increasingly important partner for Europe. On his first ever visit to Brussels in 2004, he was given the sort of ceremonial welcome which would have been unthinkable a few years before. Many of the European Union's 27 members are now big investors in Libya. You don't have to look far to see why Libya is an important trading partner for the European Union. It provides nearly 10% of its oil. It's now the third largest supplier behind Norway and Russia, and its importance is growing. Only recently it overtook Saudi Arabia for that third spot. And if Libya is important to Europe, then Europe is crucial to Libya. Italy buys 32% of Libya's oil output. Germany takes 14%, France 10%. The rest of Europe, 23%. That means Europe takes a total of 79% of Libya's oil, by far its biggest customer. It was the decision of the United Nations to lift sanctions against Gaddafi's government that started the European rush. The former colonial power Italy was among the first to normalise relations. Others soon followed, attracted by the prospect of oil from a supplier close to Europe. Libya has the largest reserves of oil in Africa, and its deposits are relatively cheap to exploit. The release by Britain of the Lockerbie bomber was a sign of the UK's willingness to foster good relations with Gaddafi, even though it risked damaging ties with the United States. But even Britain is now condemning Libyan actions.
We condemn the use of heavy weaponry against protesters. We're shocked by the reports of the number of deaths, 35 apparently at one hospital overnight. And we've had to say very clearly, just because the news media doesn't have full access to Libya, the eyes of the world are still upon the Libyan government and how it is responding to protest.
And as the crisis deepens, Europe is coming under increasing pressure to act. Harry Smith, Al Jazeera.
But will Europe act? Well, let's talk to energy analyst Amir Bayati in Vienna. Amir, there's this relationship, economic relationship, almost 80% of Libyan oil goes to Europe. Will the violence in Libya affect that kind of deal?
I think in the current situation, there is no any danger or no any big influence, no any change. But we see in the last days the speculation on the oil market, not because the crisis in Libya, but also because in the Middle East and Bahrain. And as you know, I think if the protester in Libya, they attack the pipeline, then, as you know, more than 30% of the Libyan oil go to Italy, and they have they act in with Italy, or they have a own company based in Italy. They are not only a producer, but also they have a distributor. That means they have more than 2,000 service stations in Italy, Germany, Switzerland, and Egypt. That shall be maybe painful for the European countries, especially because they put too much since 2004. After the Gaddafi visit to Brussels, they invest more and more. As you know, when Libya leave this American sanction, the European country, they invest there. So there is exchange between two together. But in the current situation, there is no any influence on the crisis in Libya. But in the long distance, maybe we shall see what happened, even when the protester, they attack the pipeline, then other situation.